There is mass panic at the White House right now as Donald Trump continues to commit what many people, in their opinion, are saying could be war crimes abroad, other crimes here at home, essentially a criminal regime right now that Donald Trump rules over like a mafia boss. And we all know the Supreme Court gave Donald Trump absolute immunity, but that absolute immunity does not apply to Donald Trump's staff at the White House. It does not apply to Donald Trump's cabinet. It doesn't apply to anybody else in Donald Trump's orbit, or frankly, anyone else, subject to United States law, other than the Supreme Court saying that Donald Trump gets absolute immunity as long as it could be basically argued that it was an executive function or part of his Article 2 powers. And so as people are terrified about what's going on overseas, what's going on here at home, ICE, Border Patrol, Gestapo terrorizing people, as people see, well, what's going to happen to, Pam Bondi and these DOJ people who are covering up the Epstein files and covering up child sex trafficking rings, and what's going to happen to DHS people. People are panicking. And the way Donald Trump is trying to keep everybody there, to try to keep the glue together, keep this regime together, is by promising to pardon everybody that ever, as long as you're loyal to him, he says, I will give you a pardon. The Wall Street Journal has reported that Trump promises mass pardons to staff before leaving office. In recent meetings, the president said he would pardon those within 200 feet of the Oval Office, say people familiar with the remarks. And so we've also noticed a lot more leaking out of the White House, Department of Defense, and State Department and other departments as well. And you know that a story kind of resonates beyond the political class when People magazine covers it. And so here was the headline from People magazine: Trump vows to pardon everyone who comes within 200 feet of the Oval Office before term ends, the report claims. Donald Trump has already issued 1,600 pardons to date, more than any other president ever, and Trump's done it in a very short period of time. And he reportedly plans to announce mass pardons before leaving office. Now, the Wall Street Journal was the original source of this, but People magazine then reached out to Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, or who I call the White House chief propagandist. And Caroline Leavitt said the following: the Wall Street Journal should learn to take a joke. However, the president's pardon power is absolute. In other words, as this regime frequently does, when there's a scandal, when there's something very serious and sickening and disturbing or criminal, or when Donald Trump says things like, we're going to obliterate civilizations, or open the effing straight or else we're going to obliterate you, or when Donald Trump makes other threatening statements and makes posts that really makes you question seriously cognitive and mental capacity, what do they always say? You can't take him literally. You can't take him seriously. He's like doing stand-up. This is like funny stuff. When he threatens genocide on civilizations, he doesn't, you gotta just realize this is just his tactics. The words themselves don't actually matter. But it is notable that, the quote was, his pardon power is absolute. And so she's not denying it one bit, Caroline Leavitt. I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds podcast, Substack, and YouTube channel. Harry, it's great to see you as always. Now, Harry, for a few things to point out. Number one, how Donald Trump has wielded his pardon power thus far. I mean, in the past, in order for you to be even eligible for pardons, you had to meet certain criteria, and cases that were certain years old would never even be considered to even get on the president's desk to begin with. So Donald Trump has thrown out all of the norms. He's thrown out the function of the main kind of pardon lawyer and a whole division of folks who were supposed to look through these diligently, meticulously, take the job seriously. There's been a whole little cottage industry of former Trump lawyers in private practice who make huge amounts of money, apparently charging clients millions of dollars in order basically to get these pardons. You and I have covered before people like the Republican governance in Puerto Rico and their, staff and other people who were involved in massive scandals, people who invested in Trump's company. There's lots of ways to get this pardon. And Trump's pardoned some of the biggest con artists, the biggest fraudsters, billions of dollars in consumer fraud. Donald Trump talks a lot about fraud, retail fraud. People who engaged in that got pardoned just because maybe their wife was able to funnel money to a Trump PAC or get money to a Trump friend or one of these things, Harry. And so here we are, though, now talking about Trump openly saying to everybody, you stay loyal to me, I give you a pardon, as we see what's going on in the Middle East and across, and here at home. So what do you make of it, Harry?
Yeah, for as we see it, but as they see it. So this is in direct response to the continued expressions of concern by administration officials who, as you say, they don't have the get out of jail forever free card that the Supreme Court bestowed on Trump. And they're saying, we're going to get prosecuted down the line, or they're saying at a minimum, we're going to lose the House and we're going to be investigated. And they're nervous, and they should be. When I went into government, a guy who you would have heard of, but I'll keep it between us, said to me, Harry, just don't get indicted. This is on people's minds when they have to do dirty work, and no administration has had more or dirty work than Trump. That's the first point. The second is, this really is by now what Levitt had to say, a tired trope of Trump's, the ha ha ha, just kidding, no, I wasn't. This sort of talking out of both sides of his mouth. It's a version of what he does all the time to his MAGA faithful when he, mocks handicapped reporters and makes rank sexist comments. And then he just says, how dare you suggest that that's what I was saying, when of course he's, dog whistling to. So the fact that he is supposedly joking about it, and at least that 200-foot comment what prompted chuckles in the room. But in fact, it gets through. It is meant to get through, and especially because he's doing it frequently and all the time. Third, on the pardons themselves. We've talked about this before when the books are written on Trump. Maybe the thickest chapter in terms of documenting corruption will be what he's done on pardons. What Levitt calls a absolute power. Look, it is part of any civilized society, and there's a reason for it. There are people who are supposed to get it and not get it. It's the paradigm is someone who finished serving their sentence, admits their guilt, is rehabilitated, become a constructive member of society. He bestows it, besides the whole corruption sort of satellite, as you say, people literally on consulting arrangements for 6 figures a month to try to work the system and rig a pardon. They are precisely the least deserving people, the January 6 folks who, for example, who as soon as they get pardons take it as a sign that they were innocent all along. They've used it outrageously, and so has Trump as part and parcel of his wholesale project to just whitewash history and cover up his own crimes. So the pardon part of it really is especially obnoxious, and I'll call it anti-constitutional, because maybe presidents have this wide-ranging power, but it's never been used remotely like this. And this going back to, Sheriff Joe and Trump 1.0. He's just always, it's the perfect kind of retail thing for Trump to make people totally kiss his butt. It's like, I'll bestow this on you at the end. And I'll just finally say, ha ha ha, the joke is on us and will be on us when this, pages and pages and pages, I very much expect will issue of pardons come, January 2029. It's an outrage, but it is just, so par for this Trump course. And, it's not just that we expect it, but the people who are in there saying, I don't want to go to jail, are really taking it for granted. And also, but one more thing is part and parcel of, he has, even with Pam Bondi, who he's going to get a great private sector job for, the people that he is firing, he's kept close, giving them soft landing positions because he wants to secure their loyalty. He doesn't want them going out and trying to talk trash, but the main way he does it is the wink and a nod. Don't worry, your pardon's in the mail. It might take a couple years to arrive, but I, big boss Donald Trump, I'm going to take care of you without any question, Ben, the most corrupt abuse of the pardon power in the nation's history.
You know, I think about the predicate acts for RICO, federal criminal prosecution, and, you know, everybody in the organization is held responsible for the acts of the organization, even if you don't even necessarily know what someone else in the organization was doing, and what, you know, or you weren't directly responsible for those specific acts, you know, and that's how people who were engaged in sex trafficking rings or cover up in sex trafficking, they would be prosecuted for engaging in that behavior. Often one of the tools is RICO. And as I've been saying before, what happens when you have a Department of Justice presented with a law like the Epstein Transparency Act, and you don't follow it because you are covering up a child sex trafficking ring at the request of someone who has absolute immunity, Donald Trump, and he's claiming some executive power, but you don't have the immunity. And now what happens if you're in the DOJ? And obviously my hypothetical, Harry, may never be taken to this conclusion, but in a way, a federal prosecutor wouldn't hesitate to go after a guy in Hawaii linked to a cover-up of a sex trafficking ring in Florida if there was some nexus in the broader organization, even if those two people didn't know each other. So if the DOJ at a leadership level is engaged in this conduct, couldn't one make the argument, well, the AUSA in Idaho is responsible, or the AUSA in Hawaii, or whatever, because you're part of an organization that hasn't behaved like the Justice Department, but as a criminal cartel. Right. And I know the hypothetical I give is a little bit out there, but it shows that people are worried, even if they're career people who think, hey, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. You could be brought into this.
You know, you betcha that could happen. And let's say even, you know, some of these people become exposed to state prosecutions. I wonder if we'll see the so-called Trump defense. I thought it was okay because Trump was going to give me a pardon, and indeed he did. But just think about it. You have a mob boss, as you said, with criminal immunity. So you can do, as he's come close, you know, he's basically said, you know, give me the pretty damn near the equivalent of, how about a paper bag with $250,000, you know, really totally rank and corrupt quid pro quos. But you got a mob boss with a immunity decision and the presidential seal. That's a breathtaking collection of powers and a total recipe for abuse. And that's exactly what he's taken it as a license for. I mean, I shouldn't laugh. It's as rank and nasty and as far away from the Article 2 responsibility, which is still his chief constitutional lookout to take care that the laws be faithfully and fairly executed, as it gets. But at this point, his one way of looking at it, I'm going to get away with it. That's all that matters. And, you know, I'll just repeat, we're going to see a breathtaking parade of just, you know, poster examples of people who should not be getting pardons lining up, getting them, and leaving town January 19th or so, 2029. This really, really stinks.
Everybody, please subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds. Just search Talking Feds on your YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. And he's got a Substack and a podcast called Talking Feds as well. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.